Model S and X are far too expensive, and the Model 3 is about to be refreshed, so a lot of people are holding off on that. Which leaves us to the age-old question, long range versus standard range. In this case for the Model Y, specifically because it's probably not due for any kind of massive refresh within the next few months, and there's a new Model Y on the horizon. We finally got a rear-wheel drive option, replacing that confusing and bizarre old 4680 Model Y that has now been wiped off the face of Tesla's website. And there's even been some price cuts, not just for the standard range Model Y, but even for the long range option. So in today's video, I'm entertaining which one makes the most sense for you. Of course, there is not a blanket statement, yes or no. It depends on your use cases, how you're planning on utilizing the car. But truthfully, as much on this channel as I try to reiterate that your range isn't all that matter, what is more important is your charger speed and your charging network. The difference here is actually gotten pretty dang small. We're talking $4,500 more for the Model Y long range all-wheel drive, and $4,500 is not nothing. I mean, that's what the price gap is right now. Literally within a couple of hours, it's possible that the price gap could change again. Tesla fluctuates their pricing all the time based on supply and demand, but for the sake of this video, we're entertaining, is the Model Y long range worth the additional $4,500? Just as a little bit of a recap for you, so yes, the long range obviously gets you 330 miles of range with the base tires and just 5 seats, and the all-wheel drive also unlocks a lot more performance, more than you may think. So the rear-wheel drive Model Y, the entry-level one, now starting at just $44,000, is actually the slowest Tesla they've made in quite some time, with a 0 to 60 of 6.6 seconds. In my opinion, that's still plenty fast. Like, I drive my Tesla in chill mode all the time, but if you care at all about that roller coaster feeling and just slamming the accelerator and seeing how fast your car can go, then the rear-wheel drive might not wow you as much as other Teslas out there. In my opinion, still, it's impressive how quickly that vehicle can accelerate and still not make a lot of noise. That's the other weird thing about electric cars, is you're just like, this should be roaring right now, and yet it's dead silent and you're flying down the freeway. But not only does the long-range Model Y support a 0 to 60 time of 4.8 seconds, but it also has the optional performance boost option, which if you either pay $2,000 more, or maybe you know someone else in your neighborhood or your family group that ends up buying a Tesla of some kind, they could use your referral code, and with a few thousand credits, you should be able to unlock that performance boost if you don't feel like paying the $2,000. Tesla referral code is an amazing thing. That's why there's always going to be a referral code down in the description there, even if it's not mine. I just don't want anybody to miss out on the free money you get or free perks you get whenever ordering a Tesla. But with that performance boost, the 0 to 60 time actually drops to about 4.2 seconds, putting it very close to the feeling that you get with the Model Y performance, and that has a whole different feeling to it. As someone who has experienced it firsthand,
oh gosh.
okay, we made it to 60.
Okay.
I did it.
I felt like
I gotta get
I was
to
on
60
a roller
once.
coaster.
I gotta say, like, the 0 to 60 times when you're in a dual motor Tesla, not only do you get that push feeling from the rear motor, but you're also getting like a pull feeling from that front motor just grabbing the road really, really aggressively. So if performance matters to you at all, of course, the long range is probably gonna be worth that additional $4,500. And if you live in a snowier climate or an icy climate, all-wheel drive may be more important to you. However, I would say to everybody that the Model Y is not gonna be like a Rivian in terms of off-roading performance. And there's a lot of people that can get by with rear-wheel drive vehicles in the winter as long as you've got a decent set of snow tires around, but that's just another set of tires you have to buy, which eats into the savings of opting for the new rear-wheel drive Model Y. But there is one advantage we should give to the standard range that not a lot of people are talking about, but we're pretty confident is the case. It is more than likely using the same lithium iron phosphate battery pack found in the standard range Model 3, which, in case you don't know what that is, it's basically just a more stable battery chemistry, which means you can charge it to 100% every single day, and the cycle life, or how many miles you can put on that battery pack, should be much, much higher than that of the traditional 2170 cells that they put into the long-range Model Y, which, because it's a higher energy-dense pack, means it's not quite as stable and the cycle life isn't as high, although it should still last you hundreds of thousands of miles, no problem. problem. It's not that big a deal in my opinion, but it should be noted that for daily driving with the Model Y long range, you're probably just going to cap it out at about 80% every single day. So if you're only charging the long range to about 80% daily, that translates more to about 260 miles of range, otherwise known as the same range as the rear-wheel drive Model Y. So in my opinion, just comparing the range numbers and saying, oh, this one can go further is not like the entire picture. Yes, right before a road trip, you'll be fine charging it up to full and getting that 100%, but the 2170 cells that use nickel, manganese, and cobalt instead of iron, those are more likely to degrade faster than the iron-based battery pack. So the range advantage may not seem like that big of a difference within the first couple of years. They all just kind of blur together. But what makes a far bigger difference on road tripping is your charging speed. And that's once again another advantage of the long-range Model Y. It can support up to 250 kilowatts, whereas the lithium iron phosphate battery pack in the standard range Model Y caps out at 170 kilowatts, which basically is just a reference to how much energy you're pumping into the battery pack when you're at a supercharger. So yes, when you're on a road trip, like if you play around with apps like a Better Route Planner, not a sponsor or anything, just an incredibly useful tool for EV customers out there, or even people just researching electric vehicle purchases. For my most common road trip, driving up to see my parents' place out of state, it's like a full day's worth of driving, and when I plug in the long range Model Y, it can do it in about 14 and a half hours, so you know, most of the day. But if you plug it in with the standard range Model Y, it turns into about 15 and a half hours. So on an all-day road trip, mostly because of that charging speed, it's looking like if you pay that extra $4,500 for the long range, it saves you about an hour every full day's worth of road tripping. To some people, every hour counts and every minute counts. You just want to get there as soon as possible. But to those thinking like, oh, the standard range is going to be left stranded and stuck on the side of the road, no, I really don't think that's the case. Tesla has superchargers everywhere, and the display inside makes it super easy to plan your trips, and it tells you exactly where you need to go, what your arrival percentage is going to be, and how to avoid running out of energy on those long stretches between chargers. So I don't think you're going to be stuck with a standard range anywhere. It just might take 30 minutes to an hour longer with that cheaper vehicle. The good news though, when it comes down to the interior between these two, is they're almost exactly the same. You still have the premium sound system on both the standard and long range. Not quite the case with the Model 3, where the standard range gets a little bit worse of a sound system. You also get the HEPA filter on both the standard and long range, which means great protection against particulates and, you know, deadly toxins that could be outside of the vehicle in the event of a bioweapon attack. The Model Y has a great filtration system built in there. Same steering wheel, still gear stocks across the board with the Model Y and everything. However, one advantage I have to give to the long range Model Y, even if it's a bit of a price hike along with it, is that for some reason Tesla lets you get the 7 seats with the long range Model Y, and they don't let you spec 7 seats with the rear-wheel drive Model Y. I'm still not entirely sure the reasoning behind that. I guess the 7-seat option lowers your range a little bit, and maybe Tesla's a bit more worried about range when it comes to the lower range option, but they still let you spec the lower range option with the larger tires, which knock off a few more miles of range as well. So I'm a little bit confused as to why that's a long range Model Y exclusive. You can't even get the 7-seater with the performance Model Y either. So literally, it only works with that exact trim. Lowers your range by a little bit, but yeah, you get a couple extra seats in the back. Really only going to be comfortable and good for little kids. It's probably not going to be comfortable for any adults. Having sat in the third row of the Model Y myself, and I'm only 5'10", I felt very crammed, very uncomfortable. I could, you know, legally fit and click my seatbelt and everything, but definitely wouldn't want to be in there for an extended period of time. So if you've got little kids, the third row will probably be fine. But the other advantage to the 7-seater, even if you don't necessarily think you need 7 seats, is that the second row is actually now on rails for that option, because you have to kind of slide it up towards the front to make room for the legs of people sitting in the third row. Inversely, it also lets you move the second row seats back further than what they could be in the 5-seater Model Y, because the 5-seater second row isn't on a rail system. So I've heard, at least from secondhand sources, that if you spec for the 7-seater Model Y, the second row gets a little bit more legroom, a little bit more options basically with seating, but then of course it comes at the cost of, it's a $2,500 add-on at checkout, so that turns it into more of a $7,000 upgrade compared to the rear-wheel drive Model Y, and you also lose out on a little bit of cargo space in the back because you've got 2 seats back there now. But there are still additional cup holders with the third row, as well as USB-C chargers. So if you've got little kids that love their iPads, there's a charger back them to keep them entertained. Same powered liftgate design on both of them, same color options available on both. So in my experience, if I had to pick one over the other, I would say, hey, look, you're spending over $45,000 on this vehicle anyway. Both of them qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit, at least right now. That could change next year because the lithium iron phosphate battery pack in the standard range Model Y is being imported from China. It's not being manufactured here, so it might not qualify next year. But for the remainder of this year at least, if the prices don't change all that much, I'm gonna say the long range is worth the extra $4,500 because not really it makes that big a difference to have a 330 mile range versus 260. The bigger deal is the 250 kilowatt fast charging. That's what lets you get back on the road faster. And the all-wheel drive is great for those slippery road situations with snow and ice. You get the 7-seat option, which in my opinion, even if you don't plan on using the third row all that often, it gives you just a more objective advantage in my opinion compared to the cheaper Teslas on the site like the Model 3, which still seats 5 people just as much as a Model Y can sit 5 people. The only difference is the Model Y is a bit higher off the ground, so it's a little bit more comfortable to get into, and it's a hatchback. But in my opinion, if you're only moving around 5 people and you're comfortable with a 5-seater, the Model 3 should be considered because that's another $4,000 cheaper than even the Model Y standard range, and it still has the lithium iron phosphate, and it's more efficient, so you get more like 270 miles of range on day one. And at this time, it still qualifies for the federal tax credit, and it still has gear stocks. So if you're not holding out for the Project Highland refresh, probably dropping next year or something, the Model 3 is still gonna have a lot of cargo room, still able to seat 5 people. It's just a little bit more uncomfortable getting in because it's lower to the ground, but yeah, slightly worse sound system, no more HEPA filter, but how often are you dealing with bioweapon attacks, right? I'm very happy with my LFP Model 3, so I guess I'm biased. If you are looking for a larger vehicle with a bit more utility, I'm gonna have to admit that the Model Y long range is not that much more, has the better charging speed, has more seating options and advantages compared to a Model 3. Like, hey, I can fit 7 people technically in this car, and you cannot do that with the Model 3 legally, at least, and it's not that much more money. So just make sure whenever you're ordering a Tesla, whichever one makes sense for you, you use a referral code like the one in the description to get $250 off, as well as 90 days of free full self-driving, which should unlock FSD beta, which is kind of amazing to experience and watch. Just don't believe that it's going to turn into a robotaxi by the end of the year. Which option makes the most amount of sense for you guys? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.